Welcome to GothCast episode 9. This is Dr. Sanders.
And this is Robbie Gore.
Today we have a band that a lot of people might be confused by that we're talking about.
Yeah, we have a band that transcends a lot of genres, and people might not necessarily associate with the gothic scene.
Yeah, I would say most people would associate this band with punk music, actually.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, and that band is The Damned.
That's true. It
Yeah.
is.
So definitely, if you're familiar with The Damned, you're probably familiar with punk jackets with the patch sewed on, or
Yeah, leather jackets, lots of pins.
or New Rose, or those
Yeah.
kind of things.
You know, safety pins through your cheek and
Yeah,
all that sort of stuff.
a lot of people associate with that, but what a lot of people might not know, but in the 80s, Damn released a lot of really good gothic music.
No, they released amazing gothic music in the 80s. I have to say that with an asterisk.
Maybe.
So they have one... I don't even know if we should get there yet.
No. We'll talk
probably
about
not.
it. This is just a very, surprising thing to people because they do market their first few albums, where they're hardcore punk, and
Yep.
everything, very similar like the Sex Pistols and everything throughout the 70s.
Actually, a little bit of trivia about them. They were the first punk band to have a single. They were the first punk band to have a full-length record, and the first punk band to tour the U.S. They did all that before the Sex Pistols.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
And they did it looking good.
right.
But we're going to be talking about The Damned from 1980 onward.
Yeah.
And that's because,
This is what's known as their gothic phase.
yeah, so they disbanded in 89. And, they're together now, but
Yeah.
they basically reformed with a new version of The Damned later. But in that time, from 1980 until I think it was 86, when they
Yeah.
were releasing albums, and they did some live albums and things like that. But they were doing extremely gothic music.
Yeah, very gothic.
And we'll talk about some of the things, because The Damned are a very strange band. As anybody knows who's a fan of them, is that they tend to blend genres a lot.
Oh, definitely.
And they do it with some success. Not always is it perfect, or does it feel like a cohesive sound.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like they're doing this song in this style and then doing the next song in a different style. So just be aware that when we're saying that these are gothic albums,
There's some give and take on that.
yeah, so most of the albums will have a kind of few different kind of songs here and there.
Yeah, with the exception of Phantasmagoria, each of these albums is going to sway a little bit back and forth.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. So if you're just wondering why we decided to pick The Damned, it's because the albums that are gothic are really good. The music that is quintessentially gothic
Yep.
is like to a T what you would imagine a goth band would be.
Yeah, and everything that you want a goth band to be.
Yeah, I can't imagine we'll ever talk about their earlier albums.
Probably not. It just doesn't apply to our audience perhaps as much. And maybe I shouldn't say that, because a lot of you probably do listen to punk, because there's a lot of people who are into gothic music who like punk.
It might just not apply to me.
Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily apply to our show's content. So,
Yeah, but these albums do. And so we're going to start at 1980.
all right, 1980. So we have the Black Album.
The Black Guy. I thought we were talking about The Damned, That we were talking about not Metallica
Yes.
or Spinal Tap, right?
So for those of you who don't know, Metallica ripped off The Damned.
Is that it?
Yeah. So in 1980, we have a release by The Damned called The Black Album.
Yep.
And it's actually poking fun at the Beatles' White Album.
Yeah, exactly. Which is pretty funny. I actually do really like that.
I really do too.
And this album, I think it's really good. In fact, I like this album a lot.
I have such a hard time really criticizing any of these albums. We'll get to the criticism because it comes.
I'm sure you will.
But this really is a fun album for me.
Yeah.
And that's why I like it so much.
Yeah, I actually like that the transition from being like a punk band into kind of a more experimental band is really obvious here, and still has some of those elements, right?
Yeah.
It kind of, like we said, some of these albums are a little bit inconsistent in the sound, but that's actually what is kind of enjoyable about this one, especially because you have a lot of songs. You have songs that could have been on their previous albums.
Definitely.
So Sick of This and Hit or Miss, they're very, very punk sounding.
Very punk.
Just pounding drums, a chugging bass, electric guitars and everything like that. They're really good, actually, for what they are. Actually, I do like them, especially Sick of This and That. I do like that song a lot.
Yeah.
But then you have these songs that just are way different from them. So you have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which has...
It's a great song.
It's totally sounds like a gothic song.
It does.
And it uses like acoustic guitars and it just sounds so great.
Well, that's my one thing about this album that I really like. This is one album where I'm probably not going to criticize them for being all over the place because I think they actually do it really well. So they'll have like a punk song that starts out very punky and all of a sudden we get into this chorus that's full of harmonies and acoustic guitars and all these instruments that come out of nowhere. And I think that's what's fun about this transitionary phase for them is that they're really playing around with sound and they're not afraid to do so at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually like this is actually double albums. I like it whenever bands do that, but the kind of the double album version of this, you know, like it kind of is double album because they put live songs on it, like their older live songs on it. So I don't know if you would necessarily say that this is a full double album and that they're not creating.
I don't technically consider it a double album myself.
Oh, just because, the live tracks, they already existed. You know, they didn't make this music for this album. It already existed, and then they just put it on this album.
And I don't know. Maybe you listened to them more thoroughly, but I didn't really even consider them part of the review.
Oh, I did.
Okay.
But that's okay. I just wanted to mention that they're on there. That the double album aspect of this, it's filled out with live songs. But I do really like that, actually, they have a super long song. And I've mentioned this on a whole bunch of our previous episodes, is that out of any other band, any other type of music, gothic music is not afraid to have a ridiculous runtime for one song.
No, not at all. Or an intro that lasts forever.
Yeah. And this one is one of the longest. It's Curtain Call. It clocks in at 17 minutes long.
Curtain Call is fucking long.
Yeah. And I actually really like this song.
It's good.
It's probably one of my favorite songs on the album. It's just an epic, you know, but it's not like a cliched kind of epic.
Yeah.
Because whenever they're doing the piano or the slow parts or anything, it builds up and, you know, there's kind of the crazy transitions and everything. And even when it goes into kind of like a more fast-paced rocking kind of part of it, isn't that like big, like, ha ha, you know, like gigantic drums, like, it's kind of subdued, and I actually like that.
No, I totally understand what you're saying with that. And we'll see some other like epics and ballads on the other albums that come, and I tend to enjoy them whenever the Damned do them.
Yeah.
They really do them well.
Yeah, I think some better than others, like especially when we get to talking about the next album.
Yeah.
But as far as the slower songs on this one, I actually think that they work pretty well. And that is also kind of credited to the balance that they have here. You know, they don't overload the album with one type of song, and that's actually what I really like about this one.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. And just to mention, you know, you and I may disagree on which tracks we do or do not like. And there'll be some crossover on ones that we do like because you and I both seem to really like The Damned.
Yeah, exactly.
But for me, I like the opening track a bit. Lively Arts is okay.
Well, hey, wait, don't try to skip that. Wait for the Blackout. That's the opening track. Okay, it's a good song. It definitely has that stereotypical like punk sound to it.
Yeah.
In the choruses and everything, and like for the vocals, I like it, but it's definitely not up to par with what I like on the rest of the album. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on skipping over that. My goal was pretty much just to, I think that you don't like that song because you don't like punk music.
I like punk music. I just
sort of.
I like it whenever it's a little bit catchier.
I kind of think that that's one of their catchier punk songs, at least compared to like stuff we'll see on like the next album and like.
I guess it's true.
For me, it's a feel good punk song, and I enjoy that. It's not the best song on the album, which is why I didn't spend a lot of time talking about it.
Yeah.
I like the opening track. Lively Arts doesn't do as much for me.
Not me. I don't like that song either.
I appreciate that they started trying some different things, like they use chorus on the bass in that song.
Yeah.
There's lots of harmonies in Silly Kid Games, which
I actually like that song.
Yeah, I like the use of harmony and arrangement in that song.
Yeah.
I didn't care as much about Drinking About My Baby.
No, I didn't like the song.
I didn't like Twisted Nerve.
No, I don't like the song either. In fact, See, that's the thing about this album is that there's some songs that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
But there's some stuff which I'm so indifferent to. There's nothing really I hate. I would say probably the song I dislike the most on this album is Twisted Nerve.
Yeah, I could see why. And then to point out songs that I really do like, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is great. I know you disagree with me on this, but I like 13th Floor Vendetta, and I'll argue why I like it.
Okay.
The reason I like 13th Floor Vendetta is because I feel like it's the first song on the album where we really start to hear Dave Vanian's use of his more baritone operatic voice that he's going to use on other Gothic songs, because we don't really have a lot of that on this album in particular.
Not a ton in that style.
Yeah.
But I just never really liked this song. I don't know. I don't know what it is about it, but I just thought it could have been better, or maybe it just didn't fit quite as well. But I'll say a piece of trivia about it.
Okay.
It does have a reference to The Abominable Dr. Phibes. And that is one of my favorite Vincent Price movies. So it gets that credit.
Yeah, it does get that credit. I wanted to look at it objectively. And if I'm looking at it objectively, I listened to Phantasmagoria before I ever listened to this album. And I feel like it's hard to appreciate what this song does having already listened to Phantasmagoria, because Phantasmagoria does it much better.
Yes and no. I think it's trying to do something different than Phantasmagoria did. And of course it is. But there are a lot of similarities in terms of what some of the songs were trying to sound like.
I'm not talking about the album. I'm talking about that song specifically.
Oh, that song specifically? Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, I agree with it then.
No, I don't think that the albums themselves are really all that alike at all.
Yeah, exactly. You would think this album would feel really inconsistent, but it's not. I mean, at least not to me, it doesn't sound that way. Even though it kind of ping-pongs between like kind of more classic rock sound, kind of more Gothic sound, kind of more keyboard heavy songs and punk songs.
I think the difference is that it feels intentional, whereas a lot of other albums, it just kind of feels like these songs are strung together.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you can actually have an album that has the song Sick of This and That and History of the World Part 1 and it be like, okay, yeah, that came from the same album.
Yeah.
It just sounds right to me. In fact, History of the World Part 1, even though you know how I am a total hater of ridiculously cheesy 80s keyboard, I love this song.
The keyboard does bother me a little bit, but I'll give it to you. It's a good song. I like it.
That's really all I can say about this album. It was a good step in the right direction. This was a brave album for them. Yeah. I mean, if you listen to everything before this, it's pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
It's just punk. And not that I have anything against punk. It's just not exactly what I'm going to put on, especially 70s punk. No, like I said, no offense to it, but it's just not my favorite. I prefer Gothic music much more.
Yeah.
And this is an album where even if you have some idea, like I had such an idea about The Damned, and when I first heard it, I was like, whoa, this album is not what I would expect from a band, especially not that long after they released one of their biggest punk albums.
Yeah. I would say what's most admirable about this album, and really this whole section of albums, is the lengths that they're willing to go to try something new. They will see throughout these albums, I mean, obviously that statement's to be taken with a grain of salt, but they really do try and open up to new sounds and experiment and create things that they wouldn't have ordinarily done. I mean, how many punk bands would be releasing songs that could be compared to 60s psychedelia?
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that. So that's the Black Album.
Yeah.
It's a good album. I actually really like it.
I do too. I think my only disclaimer is if you're used to like really straightforward goth music, this album may not be for you.
Yeah, it's true.
But if you're willing to keep an open mind about it, and perhaps if you have a background with punk rock, I think you'll enjoy this.
I agree.
All right. Well, that was the Black Album.
Okay, so this is our news segment for this episode.
Yep.
And so we have, again, a variation of a whole bunch of things that interested us. And I want to go over this one first because I forgot to mention it last time. And seeing as how Robert is so descriptive when describing Andrew Eldritch, I thought that this was a good story. So just a few hours before Sister Mercy were supposed to play in October, so this is October 21st, right? And he cancels the show, right?
Yep.
And so a lot of people, because Sister Mercy don't play like all the time, a lot of people had traveled from all over the place. And so, yeah, people were pissed.
Yeah.
So, and keep in mind, this is about
See, he canceled the show for vocal strain or something lame like
this
that.
Is Cologne or like Berlin. So he canceled the shows on time. A lot of people had traveled, I mean, literally hours before the show. This wasn't like days. You know how I'm going to read the update that they post their website, which, by the way, remember how I told you they never update their website? This was so weird to find an update on their website.
Right?
So
they had to.
Yeah. So this is the update that they gave. It was October 21st. And so unfortunately, the sisters have had to postpone the final 3 dates of their October 2015 tour due to an outbreak of illness in the band and crew. This afternoon, Andrew Eldritch was seen by a local doctor, was diagnosed with viral laryngitis, which explains the illness flying around the bus, and signed off from singing for at least 5 days. 5 of the band and crew have been suffering with similar symptoms for a week. Unfortunately/fortunately, they don't have to sing for 90 minutes a night. Colm Palladium has been rescheduled to December 8th, 2015, and Berlin Columbia Halle will be on December 9th, 2015. Original tickets remain valid, and of course, refunds are available from point of purchase for those who can't make the new dates. Huge apologies to all, especially those who have traveled from far afield.
Yeah. All I have to say is, where's the refund for the travel money?
Exactly. That's what a lot of people were really mad about, because a lot of people had taken very, very long train rides to get there and would have to take it back. And a lot of people had reserved hotel rooms.
Yep.
And then a day later, they posted another update saying, "We're pleased to announce we've rescheduled the postponed Greek date. This will now take place at Ghazi Music Hall, Athens, on Sunday, December 6, 2015. Original tickets remain valid and refunds are available from point of purchase. Apologies again to those who are disappointed by the rescheduling, but it unfortunately couldn't be helped. We hope to make it up to you in December." So it was actually funny. The response from fans was very mixed.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people were obviously extremely angry that they had to travel so far, and for a band that typically doesn't play, right? So they felt like they had gone out of their way.
Mean, they referred to it as the October tour.
Yeah.
1 month.
So it was just frustrating for a lot of people. And like I said, a lot of people have paid a lot of money and to travel and everything. But the other fan response I got from a lot of people, a lot of videos and a lot of posts from on their stuff, was that people were like, "F you, Andrew Eldritch, like you still suck." And it was like, I was like, whoa, like, because people just obviously have this idea of him.
That's very true.
Well, people have this idea of him as being like very, almost like Axl Rose-ish, sort of, if you know what I mean by that, like prima donna-y and very frustrating to work with.
Yeah.
And so because of that, it seemed like people were way more willing to take a jab at him, because people were just like, especially, like a few hours before a show. Like,
yeah. Come on. A day's notice they could have given at least.
It's just, yeah. And so, especially 5 people from the crew were sick, right?
Right.
But who knows, right? We're not them, but I just thought that the fan response, it's so funny because, you get a lot of people who are like, like Dave Grohl, Dave Grohl's a bad example because he broke his leg and he kept playing.
Continued to play. Yeah. That's not a good example at all.
Okay, let me think. I'm trying to think of somebody. It's hard to think of somebody, right? But so say like
Lemmy canceled a tour.
Yeah, Lemmy had to cancel some tours and a ton of dates because he was sick, and a lot of people.
He was legitimately sick.
Yeah,
he was going to die sick.
Yeah, exactly. And so he canceled a whole bunch of shows. And everybody's like, "Okay, Lemmy, just come back on whenever. We love you, Lemmy." And because Lemmy always tries to be that guy, he's like, like I'm gonna go out and play. He
does. Even when he's sick, he plays usually.
Yeah. And then I think because Andrew Eldritch has such a reputation, people were like, "Screw you, Andrew Eldritch." Like, It was so like, whoa to me, because you just don't expect that from people, right? You just don't expect somebody to be like...
I kind of do.
Well, I guess it's true, yeah. I just don't expect that from like somebody talking about, "Oh, I love this band, I love these albums." Like, you suck.
Hey, man. There's lots of bands that I like that I think are terrible people.
This was some news. I thought it was funny. I forgot to mention it before, but I didn't know this when it actually happened, like the day that it happened. So that's the update from Sister Mercies, in case you're wondering for any new news on them.
Yep.
And then we have some other news on another band that we talked about.
Yeah, Christian Death has announced a North American tour.
So they're actually coming our way. They're actually going to be in LA, and I think they're actually going to San Diego and maybe Huntington Beach,
that is.
Yeah.
Orange County for you folks who don't live here.
That's right, yeah. So that'd be cool if they come near us. We're gonna go out there, especially with the whiskey. Like the whiskey's a pretty small place.
Yeah, it really is.
So I mean, man, we could just like go right up to them probably.
Yeah, I'm sure we could.
Oh, it's not surprising since they're obviously not the most popular band in America.
Not these days.
Yeah. So I look forward to that.
Yep.
You know, as much as a lot of people have an issue with the Valor Canned era of Christian Death, you know, there's definitely some good songs. In fact, some of their biggest hits were in that era.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I look forward to seeing it. And then one other thing we want to talk about. And
it's the one thing we've been looking forward to for a while.
Yeah. And it finally was released. And it was on Halloween Day.
And that's what we spent our Halloween doing.
Yep. We watched Ash versus the Evil Dead.
Actually, we kind of had a whole Evil Dead day, didn't we?
Yeah. Watched Army of Darkness. Watched My Name is Bruce. Trying to envelop the spirit of Evil Dead and
Bruce Campbell.
And Bruce Campbell. If chins could kill. They basically premiered the Ash vs. Evil Dead TV series. And it's the extension, so it takes place right after... Like
not right after.
You know,
it takes after.
Yeah, it takes exactly how many years it's been since Army of Darkness.
Yeah,
and so Ash is working like a terrible job.
He
still
works at like Walmart, basically.
Yeah, and he's like really fat and out of shape and stuff.
So he wears a corset.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Or a girdle, if you will.
Yeah, man girdle, myrtle, but. It's super hilarious.
Oh, it's great.
And I recommend this so much. If you're a fan of Evil Dead,
specifically Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, you're really going to like this.
In fact, this is the perfect blend, I think, of Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
It has the off-the-wall comedy from Army of Darkness mixed with the horror elements and kind of like abrasiveness of Evil Dead 2. Evil Dead 2 had like its comedy moments, but the comedy is much more Army of Darkness.
Oh, definitely.
It's much more like wacky, kind of like one-liner jokes sort of thing.
It's very Bruce Campbell.
Yeah. But that's what I love about it.
Oh, it's great.
And so it's basically like the Deadites have come back. I don't even want to spoil it. I'm going to wait till next week to actually talk about the plot from the first episode.
Yeah.
Just the point is that the Deadites are coming back and...
Bruce does not want to have to fight them.
Yeah, so he tries to flee because he's Ash, and he just is like, I'm not going to deal with this, you know? But of course he can't avoid it because he's Ash. They're coming specifically for him.
He's the hero.
Yeah. So he's going to get back in duty and take out the Deadites. And one of my only criticisms for this show, I think you know what it is the effects.
Yeah, that's where I agree with you completely.
And that's because it's a mixed bag.
There's some great practical effects in the show, and there's some really bad CGI.
And they really clash, unfortunately.
They really do. Especially because they're in the same scene together.
Yeah. It basically, like, remember when the guy gets his head blown off?
Yeah.
It's so cheesy, and it looks like it was done like some After Effects effect, but then you have these supremely awesome practical effects where corpses will walk around or like spew blood.
Or heads will turn around. And
yeah. And that stuff's great. Or it's like anything with his hand.
Yep.
It's just like awesome. But just the other stuff, like the CG stuff, it just like takes me out of it. It like distracts me.
No, I completely agree. I'm willing to overlook it because I know they didn't have a big budget for this and they were really trying hard just to get it made. Mm-hmm. And now that it's out there's been a good response to it.
They already got greenlit for season 2.
Which is crazy and so great.
I am looking forward to every single episode of this.
Oh, I totally am.
And just with the first episode, I mean, we were cracking up.
Oh, it's just great.
I mean, so hard. And you just don't have those moments with a lot of shows nowadays. A lot of things are like very subtle, sarcastic humor nowadays. Like Parks and Rec or I don't watch much modern TV. Is
The
Office
is still kind of relevant.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was coming out, but
it's not on air anymore.
Yeah, but most of that stuff is more like we're in normal situations.
It's very quirky humor.
Yeah, it's more like normal situations, but hey, look, we're weird and like we don't function very well.
Or you have something that's like off the wall humor, with like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah, this one is totally its own thing. It's really sarcastic, and Bruce Campbell is just like a really goofy character.
It's very self-aware of its own campiness.
Yeah, it's like the perfect blend of that. If they had put too many jokes in it, right, or too much of like, hey, look at how awesome I am kind of jokes.
Too much groovy, baby.
Yeah, something like that. This would have suffered, but because Bruce Campbell sells every line in this, and you really kind of see him as, the Bruce Campbell from Army of Darkness. He's like the exact same guy.
Or if you've seen, My Name is Bruce, like
My Name is Bruce, pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, it's a very similar feel.
Yeah, I know a lot of people haven't seen that one.
This is like the TV series version of My Name is Bruce.
Yeah, it's definitely. I know a lot of people haven't seen that movie, but
you should.
I recommend it. It's low budget as hell, but if you want a little bit more Bruce Campbell and are kind of sick of watching Evil Dead 1, 2, 3, then I recommend My Name is Bruce. But this one, it just has me so excited. And if you're an Evil Dead fan, you are doing an injustice
by not watching this.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the two of us watching this thing, I don't think I've ever laughed so hard in years, because this doesn't just cater to new audiences, right? And this doesn't just cater to old audiences. This is entertaining. This does an introduction for people who have never seen it. And of course, you're not going to get why he's acting this way or why he is so ridiculous.
And it is a very Evil Dead introduction.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. But it's, oh man, it's so funny. But it's just totally recommended, 100% by me.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling we're probably going to be talking about this show a lot.
Definitely. And I don't want to give too much more away about it, but definitely just watch it.
Yeah. So that's our news. It's Sisters of Mercy canceling shows and people being mad at them. Christian Death announcing shows and people being excited for it. And The Evil Dead being totally awesome.
Yep. That's news.
All right. Okay, so now we're on to Strawberries.
Yep. A little bit of trivia about this album. It was originally titled Strawberries for Pigs, and if you've seen the album artwork, you might imagine why.
I actually like the album artwork for this, by the way.
I do. Yeah. It's nice.
Black Album, it's okay. Not my favorite.
Well, I appreciate that it's a play on the Beatles.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Yeah. But this one I actually think is cool. It looks unique. It's not one of those albums because a lot of albums have pigs, which is funny now that I think about it. But this one actually makes me think like, oh, it's a pig. Not like, oh, that's a pig.
Yeah. And the strawberry sitting on top of its head is just like,
okay. So yes, it's 2 years after the Black Album. And it's actually, again, a pretty dramatic shift from what they were doing even an album ago.
Yeah. We're starting to see a little more of the goth show up in the recordings. Not heavily so.
We're seeing it show up in that we're seeing kind of psychedelia music show up. And that kind of keyboard sound.
Yeah.
And that kind of like darker sensibility a little bit.
And also kind of Dave Vanian's vocals again are starting to move more towards that gothic rock vocal.
Yeah, it's just kind of more...
There's some songs that he doesn't do it on, but there's other ones where it's very blatantly the kind of vocal we're going to hear on Phantasmagoria.
This one is really, really strange for me. It's one I have a lot of mixed feelings about. Strawberries, it's technically a classic album to most people. Like, most people really like this album.
Yeah.
I have a really weird kind of feeling when I listen to it. It's got this extremely heavy, like, 60s, 70s kind of, like, classic rock vibe to it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the songs...
I don't know if I would go as far as to say classic rock, because I don't associate 60s psychedelia with classic rock. Like, this reminds me more of something like Time of the Season. Like that kind of music.
Exactly. And that's not bad. In fact, actually, one of my favorite songs on this album is one I really like is actually Strangers on the Town.
It's a really good song.
It has like almost like a funk kind of bass line and kind of like big band style sound. Almost reminds me of like his James Brown kind of like backing beat. And so it's so weird to hear these kind of things show up in a Damn song. At least for the time, you know.
Yeah.
Nowadays, probably a lot of people would actually expect that. But I just get thrown off by this album.
It's definitely a weird one. And so the Black Album took a lot more criticism from newspapers and critics and things of that nature. This album was more well received by the critics. But what they were willing to applaud more than anything was the fact that the Damned were willing to just throw everything to the wall and just, again, release an album that no one anticipated them releasing.
Yeah, there's definitely something to applaud. Does it make the album good? Not necessarily, but the album is good on its own.
Yeah.
It's just really different.
It is really different. And that's why this may not be an album for everyone. I happen to personally like this album, perhaps a bit more than you do.
I don't know about that. I mean, I really do like this album. It's just that when I compare it to even the Black Album, like I really like the Black Album a lot.
Yeah.
Especially for, it trying to do a whole bunch of stuff while still kind of holding on to like, their sound and their roots to some extent.
Yeah.
This one kind of goes and it's hard to even find a trace of what they were before.
Yeah.
Right? And it's refreshing and it's also a little strange. Like it almost feels like they're approaching this sound with being fans of it, right?
Yeah.
But then maybe it doesn't have their own kind of signature enough for me to kind of see it as like, oh, okay, this is the Damned coming into their own.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. But for me, this almost feels like, and that's why I thought we should start with the Gothic phase and not begin with their punk records.
Yeah.
It's almost kind of like they're starting over again as a band. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's almost forgivable because they're discovering this new sound. They've completely pretty much left behind any courtesies to their punk rock roots.
Well, I mean, you do have the Ignite
I'm not saying that
in the beginning.
None of their songs are punk.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying that they are paying no respects to anything that makes them punk. They feel no ties to that. They feel like they can release whatever they want.
Yeah, I mean, the intro song Ignite does have that kind of like...
It's very much reminiscent of a punk song.
Yeah, but the chorus, I like actually the chorus in that song. I actually really do like some parts of it. Not the intro. The intro, I feel like it goes on a little bit too long.
Yeah, that's probably the part of the song that drags the most.
But then you have songs like Pleasure and the Pain.
Oh my God, this song is amazing.
Okay, but let me put you on pause there. I get the song is good, but I swear this song sounds like it'd be like an Elton John song.
I don't see why that has to be an issue.
I'm not saying it's necessarily an issue. I'm just saying that
your tone doesn't say that.
It's not an issue, but it's just weird. I don't know. It's not a bad song, but I just don't know how I feel about the Damned necessarily playing it. Like, the Damned don't have a nailed down sound, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what these albums were meant to do, is to open up their sound. And even their later albums, they would just kind of experiment with it. This one, I don't feel like they nailed this one as much.
I don't know. I feel like this song in particular, and I'm not going to say the whole album is, because I think the Black Album as a whole is perhaps maybe a better album for me than this album.
Uh-huh.
But this song, I think, is stronger than any of the songs on the last album.
Okay, so let's have to disagree on that one. Because I think, I don't know. I think it's a good song. Like I said, it's a good song.
I think you're just not used to, like, pop music, Donnie.
Maybe that's it. That might be it. As far as, I think this was a single, but I did not like it, was Dozen Girls.
Yeah, I didn't like Dozen Girls at all. And you may disagree with me on this one. I liked The Dog. I thought that was kind of a cool song. Bad Time for Bonzo was horrible. I don't
like that song at all.
A song that I really felt like they should have cut from the album and would have made it better.
That's kind of what's weird about these albums with how it made me feel. I do like The Damned. I definitely love a lot of what they're doing here in this decade. But I have extremely definite feelings about these songs. If you heard on the podcast, most of the time I'm like, okay, I like this part of the song, but I may not like this one as much. It almost is like I could cherry pick these songs. I'm like, this one's really good. This one's really good. I don't like this one. I don't like this one. Like, just so definite. And it's kind of weird, but it is almost because they experiment so much with what they're doing.
Definitely.
In fact, even when we get to Phantasmagoria, there's one song that I think could be a really good song, but because of the way it's structured, I just don't like it.
Right,
but
fair enough. This
is kind of one of those albums where they do a whole bunch of different things, but there's a few things I just don't like the way that they do it.
Yeah.
Even though it could be a good song, a good melody, everything like that.
I know what you mean. Like songs like Ignite could have been better, and Dozen Girls, I just don't like it.
I don't like that sound, the keyboard sound.
I don't know. But then there's songs that I really like on this album, like Pleasure and Pain, obviously, I like.
Yeah.
I already mentioned The Dog. I really like Stranger in the Town.
Yeah. Like I said, that was one that I really enjoyed. I don't know. I definitely didn't like this album as much as I like the Black Album. It's not that it's different, because the Black Album's different than a lot of other albums.
Yeah.
It's just that it wasn't necessarily an evolution for them. They were just trying to reinterpret 70s songs, if that makes sense.
I don't know. I almost kind of feel like it's more like them paying homage to them because they grew up on that stuff and it's stuff that they love. And it's like, why the hell not?
Okay, yeah.
That's my take on it anyway.
I agree to that. Okay, yeah, it makes sense. And it's definitely good to try homage stuff. It shows their musical chops a little bit more than, say, the Black Album did or most of the other stuff. So
early stuff.
Yeah, the early stuff. But yeah, that's Strawberries for me. It's a good album in a lot of ways. A little bit flawed for me in terms of consistency.
Which is funny because we just talked about how all over the place the Black Album is, but we love it for it.
Yeah, because it has a signature sound to it. You know, like it still has a signature Damn sound to it. Whereas this album, I feel like it's the Damn trying a whole bunch of older kind of songs.
Yeah.
While not really putting their own spin on it. Of course, Dave Vanian's vocals will always be the signature to it.
Yeah.
But I feel like so much of it borrows from other artists and other types of sound that it doesn't necessarily have its own signature sound.
Fair enough. I'll give you that. I'm willing to applaud them.
Right.
But I'm willing to applaud them for trying to do something different. I mean, like, how many punk bands would take a risk like this?
Necessarily.
At this point, what do you even call them? You can't really call them a
the
goth
Damned.
band. You can't call call them the Damned.
Yep.
And that's what I appreciate about the Damned is they are the Damned. They're not a goth band. They're not a punk band. They can't. They've done 60s psychedelia. They've done everything. Like they're a band who has thrown every ounce of inhibition to the wind and just done whatever they felt like doing.
Yep. It's really good in its own way.
Yeah.
But I would say this one, this is such a subjective album. Like,
it really is.
I think everyone's going to have a different opinion of it depending on your musical taste.
It's hard for me to recommend or not recommend this album to our audience because I just feel like everyone's going to be split on this one.
Yeah, I know definitely we are. But it's just a strange album. Like, you're either going to love it or hate it.
Yeah.
So, or think it's okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how many people will think it's okay.
Well, that's all I can say about Strawberries. I guess it's definitely one that you're going to listen to yourself. Yeah, I can recommend the Black Album to a lot of people, especially if you like the Damned and you kind of want to hear them in a little bit more melodic. But
I totally agree with you. Strawberries it's a harder one.
Yeah.
If you're a hardcore goth fan, I feel like you're probably not going to enjoy Strawberries.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I do not think so.
You might enjoy it if you're willing to keep more of an open mind again, but almost more so than the last album.
Yeah. Very open mind.
Yeah.
So that's Strawberries.
Yeah.
Go listen for yourself. Okay, this is the big one.
Yep. Here it is.
Phantasmagoria.
The perfect album.
The whole reason that we made this particular episode of the podcast.
And the whole reason that we recommend The Damned to anyone.
Yeah. This album is amazing.
Oh, it's so good.
And while we may disagree on their other albums,
this is one that we undeniably just cannot get enough of.
So this was the album where the Damned went full on goth.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so while there may be hints of it, especially on the Black Album, while there may be not much of a hint on Strawberries, there's a little bit of it, especially in his vocal stylings on Strawberries.
Probably more, that's probably the most you see of it on Strawberries is his vocal styling.
With this one, it's full on Addams Family, horror movie, Vincent Price.
Yep.
Spooky goth music.
And that's what I really like about this album. Is so like a lot of other goth albums I feel like really take themselves seriously. And I almost feel like this album pokes fun at itself a little bit.
I totally agree with that. And that's actually why I really like it.
Yeah.
This album has harpsichords, it has keyboards, it has just this, it's like grimly fiendish, and it totally pokes fun at how ridiculous that stuff is.
Yep. Yet they do it so well on this album.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's one of those times where a band really commits to something in terms of like album art, in terms of music videos, in terms of lyrical content and sound.
And fashion too.
Yeah,
like,
that's
Dave
what I mean.
Vanian like really puts on the goth image when they do this record.
Yeah, he's got the Bride of Frankenstein like streak, and I really like that.
These Victorian shirts and
it's awesome.
It's great.
This album, it just does so many things right for me, and I think one of its benefits is that not only is it kind of, commercial sound, like it's very much more commercial than pretty much everything they released before this.
Definitely. Well, especially for the 80s.
Yeah, it's 85. It's right in like the middle.
It's the heart of Gothic music right now.
Yeah. And what I like about it, especially because if you like those kind of like spooky sort of songs, like even like, kind of novelty ones, like say Monster Mash or anything like that.
Yeah.
This will fit in like right with like your Halloween soundtrack or just when you're feeling really spooky.
Yeah.
And the 80s production, big drums and like, very double track vocals and harpsichords and heavy keyboards.
It totally adds to it.
It just adds to it and it almost makes it timeless, which is so funny.
No, it really does. It's funny. When I was listening to it, all I was thinking about was like, this could almost be like a soundtrack for like a Vincent Price movie or like the Munsters or like the Addams Family
or like Paranorman or something.
Yeah.
It is that. It's all that. And that's what I really love about it. It seems like they had a lot of fun making this album.
I really think they did. And this is the first album where it's really only Dave Vanian is the only member from The Damned who returns to this album. And so they have all new members. And so Dave Vanian pretty much just gets to do whatever he wants with this album, really. And I think that shows just how talented Dave Vanian is.
Yeah. And in terms of vocals, he delivers so well on this.
Granted that like some of the lyrics might be done tongue-in-cheek, his vocal deliveries are so good. They are like the quintessential goth vocal, and they're done like with this beautiful like baritone operatic quality to them.
Yeah, and that's what I like about it is that the Sister Mercy, it's a good band, right?
Yeah.
But Andrew Eldritch's vocals are kind of like muffled or mumbled in some ways.
They are. They're very low and they are baritone kind of vocals, but they don't have an operatic quality to them at all.
Yeah, and this is very theatrical.
Very theatrical.
But it matches the music perfectly. And he has such a presence on this album. And not saying that he does in the other albums, but because the fact that he was basically, like the ringleader of The Damned at this point, he's able to really take these kind of big kind of moves to be like, okay, my vocal is going to be pushed way higher than all this stuff, and like, and that's going to be the driving force of the song. And it's just,
he doesn't have to worry about Captain Sensible throwing a guitar solo.
Exactly. And there really isn't much of that on here.
No, there isn't like really at all.
Yeah, and I just love that. And one thing I didn't mention on Strawberries when we were talking about that is they were adding more like horns and trumpets and saxophones and things like that. And as I've said in our Cure episodes, I am not a big fan of saxophone.
No, usually it really dates albums, but this, I assume you're talking about the opening track.
Yes.
Yeah. I really feel like it works so well for this track.
Yeah, Street of Dreams, for some reason it works. And I'm normally so annoyed by saxophones.
You know what I couldn't help thinking during that sax intro and then when the Street of Dreams starts is that like they almost could have used it for like Blade Runner or something.
Ah, kind of.
Not exactly, but
yeah, that same kind of melody. Yeah. And it's really good. In fact, the
first 3 songs are just so strong.
Exactly. Just there's a lot of really strong songs, like all over this album. In fact, I'm gonna get into songs that pretty much the song that I don't like on this album.
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna get some heat for it because it's a kind of beloved one, but the song Sanctum Sanctorum, I just don't like the song that much.
Okay, I could see why you didn't like it. I don't hate the song. It's not my favorite song on the record because there's a song that I dislike more than it, and you and I know, will disagree on that one.
Okay. But Sanctum, here's my argument for Sanctum Sanctorum. I think it has a lot of good elements in it, right? It has a lot of like the keyboards and stuff like that. Really good. I just don't like the way the vocals go with it.
Yeah.
The vocals are good. The backing track is good. I hate them together.
I could see why you'd say that.
It just sounds off to me. I don't know what it is. It's something.
No, there is something lackluster about that song. And while I'm looking through my notes right now, what I wrote for Sanctum Sanctorum is that it definitely has kind of that spooky intro. You got the rainfall and you got all this, the orchestration. It's very similar to the rest of the album. But it really is once the vocals come in that it just kind of becomes a little boring.
That's just kind of one of my only issues. It is the name of a club in Fullerton, though.
Yeah.
Sanctum Sanctorum. I think it's in Fullerton.
I wouldn't know.
No. Okay.
But to be honest with you, and I know you probably like the song more, but I don't really like Is It a Dream? And that song for me really drones on a bit too much.
I do disagree with that because I really like this song. In fact, the only negative thing I actually have to say about the song has nothing to do with the song at all. It actually has to do with the music video because I don't actually like the music video for that song. There's actually 2 different music videos for it.
Yeah.
As far as I could tell, who knows? Back then, they would release like different music videos for like every country.
Yeah.
But the one video where they're playing in the field, I do not like.
Yeah, I've seen both those music videos, and I know what you're talking about. And that video is definitely not the better one of the 2.
Yeah. But I actually do like Is It a Dream?
I don't dislike Is It a Dream. That's what I feel like about all these songs. Like, even the songs that I don't like as much on this album, I don't hate them. I still feel like they have their place in the album.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is such a strong album, but I'm trying to remain objective and to remain critical. And for me, this wasn't my favorite song on the record.
Yeah.
And, it would be a song that I would be less excited about when it came on than perhaps some of the other ones.
What about Shadow of Love?
Of course I like
I know, Shadow of Love's awesome.
It's not even a question.
I know.
Actually, one of the things that I really, really like about Shadow of Love is that they use a country bass line in the song, and it's a goth song.
Yeah.
That's like such a bizarre thing to me, and it works.
That's like what I really enjoy about this one. It is like an amalgamation of a whole bunch of things.
Right.
This is what I really felt was lacking from Strawberries.
No, I agree with you on that.
It was kind of a mishmash of a whole bunch of different sounds and a whole bunch of different times and didn't have its own unique thing. It just felt like the Damned reinterpreting these things. For this one, it sounds so unique. And so they're taking like these novelty songs, they're taking kind of classic rock and country bass lines and all these and harpsichords and just trying all these different things. And it sounds like nothing else sounds like this.
Yeah.
And that's what is so good about it.
I gotta agree with you on that. Everything about this album is just really intriguing. Looking through my notes again, Trojans initially, when I first listened to it, I didn't like as much. But then I started to get more into it, like the more I listened to it. There's just a lot of good instrumental stuff going on in that song.
Yeah, I like that song a lot, actually. And that's one of my favorites on the album that isn't all the other ones.
I like Eighth Day a lot, actually, too. I really like all the like call and response stuff that they do in the song. I thought that was really cool.
I actually like the Edward the Bear.
Oh, I love that song. And I love the title, too.
It's so... it's a cover song, actually.
I actually didn't know that.
Oh no, it's not a cover song. It sounds really similar to another song.
Okay,
that's right. So it supposedly is like
I'm pretty sure I didn't miss that.
Yeah, Edward the Bear supposedly like they accidentally like ripped off somebody.
Yeah,
and it sounds really similar to it, but that's right. No, because we have another single that's a cover song.
Yeah, we do have a single that's a cover.
Yeah, this one is sung by Roman Jug. Yeah, and so it sounds really kind of out of place on the album.
It's really fun though.
Yeah, it's a really good song and it works.
It does.
Like it does sound super out of place. Like if you listen to, like whoa, and then you put on Edward the Bear,
grimly fiendish.
Yeah, like all that stuff. It doesn't really fit in that way, but for some weird reason it works. Yeah. Like I don't want this song to be omitted from this album because I feel like it would detract from it.
Yeah,
and it may just because it's a really good song.
Yeah. And Grimly Fiendish is great too. That's actually what got me into kind of exploring the Damned as a gothic band was because I bought the Grimly Fiendish single just kind of thumbing through the Damned, and it was something I hadn't really seen before by them because I was used to their punk stuff. And I put it on and I was like, this song is really good and kind of goth and doesn't really fit what I thought the Damned was. And it got me to rethink and to research and re-listen and then Phantasmagoria it was this gem of an album.
Totally is. And kind of one I feel like is sort of fading in popularity or hasn't quite hit its second stride of popularity.
Yeah. Most of these bands that we've talked about are staples of gothic music and they're bands that you see people wear t-shirts of, all the time whenever you're at a goth club or whenever you see someone who's in the gothic subculture. You never see someone wearing a Phantasmagoria t-shirt, and it's a shame.
I think it's just one of those things that a lot of people don't associate with this band right away, and a lot of punk bands just associate the Damned with their first albums.
Yeah.
But you got to remember, I mean, there was more singles and videos for these albums than there ever was for, especially Phantasmagoria. I mean, There's like 3 or 4 music videos for
When
it.
you search Dave Vanian, you get obviously the very early, his Bela Lugosi kind of rip-off punk look. And then you get this, which is his like operatic,
Yeah.
like Bride of Frankenstein hair
Yeah.
with his Victorian clothes. I almost think it would be fun to see this album made into a musical.
Oh, that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
That'd be really fun. But there's so much we could say about Phantasmagoria. I think that you should just go out and listen to it. If you're actually into goth music,
You'll definitely like this album, I think.
yeah, it has that sort of like cabaret, sort of tongue-in-cheek sort of goth thing. I feel like you put this on and it's kind of like you can just kind of dance around, and it's just a really, really fun album.
It really is. And that's why I think it's a shame that it's not played in more clubs.
Yeah.
Because these are really danceable songs. Like especially stuff like Grimly Fiendish. I could see people having tons of fun dancing to that.
Yeah. So I can't recommend Phantasmagoria enough. In fact, actually go watch the videos for this one. I like the videos and stuff for it too. It's just a great, great album.
Yeah.
And pretty much the whole reason we did this episode.
It's pretty much, yeah. I couldn't agree with you more.
Right. So go pick it up. Listen
Yeah.
to it. Spotify it. I don't know.
This is the one album out of this group that we will, without falter, say listen to it.
Yep. Go listen.
All right, and we're going to talk about anything. And no, not just anything.
Not
the
just
album.
anything, just anything. So yeah, anything is released in 1986. It's the last album we're going to be talking about, and it's, I'm going to say flat, it's my least favorite one of the ones that we're talking about.
Yeah, unfortunately, this album just doesn't quite hit the mark. There are songs on it that I do like, and the one song that I like the most is, of course, a cover.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not as risky as any of the other albums, and it doesn't do the goth thing as well.
No, it does not.
So I don't feel like I can really strongly recommend this album to people.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not a good follow-up to Phantasmagoria, in my opinion. And this isn't just my opinion. It seems like a lot of people agree with that Phantasmagoria was, one of the best albums that they had done. And then this one just kind of isn't up to that kind of standard, And there's a lot of reasons for that. Apparently, the band was kind of forced into doing this one because of their contract.
Yeah.
And it's 1 year after Phantasmagoria. And whereas, they did the Black Album, took 2 years, made Strawberries, took 3 years, made Phantasmagoria.
Yeah.
It took 1 year to make this one. And
Definitely shows.
it does. It really does. And that's kind of unfortunate. And, it's not anywhere close to one of my favorites. And I do want to note that in between this time, the single Eloise came out.
Yeah.
So
Again, another cover.
yeah, it is a cover, but it came out and it perfectly matches Phantasmagoria.
No, it does. And that's why I won't make fun of it as much for being a cover.
Yeah.
Because it really does fit with Phantasmagoria. And even the cover on this album, I do like a lot. I think it's a good cover. And I almost felt like it might have been better if it was maybe grouped with Phantasmagoria. Because it really doesn't, I feel like, fit the consistency of the rest of the album.
Okay, so the cover he's talking about on this album is Alone Again Or.
Yep.
And this is a cover song, like he was saying, by a band called Love. And Love was like a 60s, 70s rock band. And this is like their epic. This is like probably their most popular song. And the Damned do a really good job of this one.
They do.
In fact, this is probably this is my favorite song on the album.
I know you don't like the song Anything. I like the song Anything.
I don't like the song.
And I liked Alone Again Or.
I just don't understand. Okay.
And then I liked the track after that. So I was thinking this was going to be a good album. I was like, okay, I like where this is going. And then it's just, from there, it just kind of takes a dip.
Yeah, I think actually majority of this album, some of the songs are good and some of the songs have good moments. I think that the biggest problem with this album, and it's totally the huge issue when albums are boring.
Yeah.
And this album, I feel like, is pretty boring. Like, it doesn't get you pumped up. It doesn't get you excited.
Yeah.
There's some moments, but
It's like, Alone Again's probably the most exciting track on the album.
yeah. And I totally agree with that, actually, because I just found myself not really connecting to a lot of this material, and it doesn't seem like they're that into it or it's that developed.
Yeah, I don't think they were. And I think part of that is so we have Rat Scabies return to the band for this recording. And so I think they're kind of gearing up to be, or at least Dave Vanian probably, I think, feels like they're going to be the former incarnation of the Damned.
Yeah.
And the former incarnation of the Damned could have never made Phantasmagoria.
Yeah, that's very, very true. There's just so many issues with this one. Okay, I'm going to go over some of the things I actually like about it, and they're very few and far between. So, like I said, Alone, Again, Or, of course, that's, I think, pretty unanimously thought of as the best song on this album. In Dulce Decorum, that's a good song. In fact,
That's another one of my favorites on the record.
I actually think it sounds similar to some of the materials on the Black Album.
Yeah, it kind of does.
And that's why I like it. As soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, that one could have been on the Black Album.
Yep.
And the only other song I like on this album is The Portrait. And that's just because it's a good piano piece.
I like The Portrait a lot too. I know you don't. I like The Girl Goes Down. I just thought it was kind of a quirky, weird song that I kind of enjoyed. But aside from that, I mean, you pretty much hit all the songs that I like on this album.
Yeah.
And I feel like I just have to say Gigolo is a horrible song.
I found it really underwhelming. And it's actually one of the singles from this album.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah. These songs are really frustrating, right? Because I can tell that there's some good ideas in here.
Yeah.
Like the piano pieces and the guitar sounds and everything. Like, it's actually produced pretty well.
Yeah, no, the production quality's good.
It's not as crisp as Phantasmagoria was because, I don't know, maybe they didn't...
They don't rush.
Yeah, it's not as layered. Like, Phantasmagoria had like a lot of little things that made it good, you know?
There'd be like a random guitar piece that just shows up just once.
Well, just
song,
like right after a phrase, you know, he would phrase something and then it would be followed up by like a response like from a harpsichord sound.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, it feels way more direct in a lot of ways. And The Portrait totally could have vocals.
Yeah,
totally could have had like these really nice vocals because they've done it so many times, even with Curtain Call.
Yeah.
That is a perfect example of how to do it. But this one just, it feels so underdeveloped in so many ways. And like you said, you like the song Anything. I don't like, I think that song's boring. It's flat out. Like,
I disagree with you. I think that's just personal taste, really. Like,
it must be because I just don't like that song. Like, that song just does not do it for me at all. And it's just really annoying in some ways that this was this kind of album.
Yeah.
And I get, you know, like even the band has expressed their kind of frustration with how this album turned out. And critics didn't like this album. It was actually a commercial failure.
Yeah.
And this was the last album that they did.
Last studio album.
Yeah, last studio album they did before. I think it was almost like 10 years later. So it's 1986. It was 9 years later. So 1995 when their next album came out. And so it's a really kind of bummer way to end out.
Yeah.
Well, I thought was a pretty interesting string of albums, you know?
Yep.
Even though, like, Strawberries has its issues, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, they're good songs. For the Damned, I feel like could have had its own unique thing. The Black Album I thought was really strong in its own way.
Yeah.
And Phantasmagoria obviously is the masterpiece in which I wish I could live inside of it. And Anything is just a big bummer for me.
It's just Anything, and I feel like the title kind of sums it up. It could have been anything, but it wasn't.
That's really what's sad about this.
Yeah.
Now, will I tell you to go listen to this album all the way through? No, but will I tell you to go listen to Alone, Again, Or? Hell yeah, that song is good.
You should definitely listen to that. If there's anything that I would say definitely listen to from this album, it's that song.
Yeah, I like what they do with it, like with the trumpets and everything, and kind of like that sort of like Mexican influence, the sort of like trumpeteering kind of thing. I really like that. But even that song is moving away from what Phantasmagoria was. Like, it's a good song, different than what Phantasmagoria and even Eloise was.
Yeah.
And it makes me sad.
Yeah, it makes me sad too. Because I really feel like you can tell that the Damned are going to break up after this album.
Yeah.
Like you can feel it in the songs.
Yeah. And they still did go on to play for quite a while.
Yeah.
In fact, they have the live album, The Final Damnation, come out, and it's basically like their last show. And
it comes out a couple years later.
Yeah. And it's actually a lot of good live material from this time because they were on it during the Phantasmagoria years.
Yep.
In fact, my favorite like live album It's Sinister something, but it's from his time, and you can find it. I think it was released in like '97, and so it just shows you the power of these songs when they were brand new. Mm-hmm. And so I really, really like the material that came out around this time, but you can just tell like it wasn't gonna last. Like if they were putting out something like the album Anything, if they were gonna be forced to do this music or they had to do it, it just wasn't gonna be, what was of quality.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's just one of those things where you have a band like The Damned, which is always had creative control in the studio, and then like they're suddenly pushed into doing this record. Like I don't think you can expect something good to come from that.
It is one of those things, like we said, like they switch members a lot, right?
Yeah. Well, starting from like 1984, or they do.
Yeah, exactly.
They kind of have a relatively consistent lineup for their punk years.
Yeah, and then even later, they have like Patricia Morrison's in the band for like a really long time.
Yeah.
That's later, but the changing members didn't necessarily mean it was bad.
No,
right?
Not at all. I mean, Phantasmagoria is a perfect example of how that can be good.
Exactly. But I feel like they need the time to be able to make good material.
Yeah, I agree.
And this probably just wasn't the right time to do this album.
I don't think so. It definitely wasn't.
So Patricia Morrison, where were you? Oh, that's right. She was with Sisters of Mercy right about this time. Or was he? 1987? All right, so Patricia Morrison would be later, but she's not on any of these albums. Just in case you're Sisters of Mercy's fan, we're like, The Damned had Patricia Morrison. She wasn't in the band during any of these albums. It's just in case you thought that she was going to be in.
And if anything, when she joins them, they're kind of more of a punk band again.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was important to kind of mention this band because...
I thought it was crucial just because of that album. And those other albums are definitely worth noting, too. But
yeah, I totally think the Black Album, like goth fans can like that album. I think Strawberries... Maybe less so.
It's a harder sell.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of people who will still appreciate it.
It's more like the vocals.
Yeah.
And the aesthetic of it will sell you more than the actual music itself. Like the structures of the songs.
Perhaps.
And then Phantasmagoria, I mean, hell, you just put that on and it's just like you're sold.
Yeah.
But I think that's important because so many people, even though this was probably their most popular time in terms of like mainstream, everything, like Eloise was a hit.
Yeah.
And then Grimly Fiendish was a hit. And so you have these very, very good songs. And for albums that were very popular, just kind of forgotten that even happened.
Yeah.
Because people tend to focus on one part of their career. And unfortunately, unless you're somebody like David Bowie.
Yep.
I mean, even David Bowie to a certain extent. People don't even listen to David Bowie's 90s albums that much. They don't even reference them that much. They're just
don't really.
Yeah. Well, they're like, people like, Space Oddity,
Yeah.
Like, that album, Ziggy Stardust, right?
Yeah.
And this is kind of one of those situations, I feel like, where The Damned did a whole bunch of albums where people connect to them because they're angry people, and they're a very unique band in that time. And they tend not to focus on the unique stuff that they did later because this stuff has such a strong presence and it's still marketed and is still very commercially viable today.
Definitely.
And so it's David Bowie syndrome, right? When was the last time anybody listened to Earthling?
Yeah.
Right? So it's a perfect example of that. I'm afraid of Americans. Yeah, I just thought it was really, really important to represent The Damned.
I completely agree.
Bring it back, man. Bring it back.
So, if nothing else, please listen to Phantasmagoria.
Yeah. In fact,
I recommend you do check out the Black Album and Strawberries. And if you're brave enough, you can listen to anything.
Yeah.
Literally.
Phantasmagoria is easily inside of my rotation of albums pretty much all the time. And it's not coming out anytime soon. I listen to stuff from the Black Album, but Phantasmagoria is all around a really good album. If you're just looking to have like a fun night where, everybody's watching some cheesy horror movie and you're all hanging out with your friends inside of a spooky lit room, just for the hell of it.
Yep.
That's the album. That is totally the album.
I totally agree.
Vincent Price movie night. So this has been GothCast episode 9. And I hope that you try to give this music a chance.
Yeah, give this band a chance.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of people were probably really confused when they saw the title of this one.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that. There's some great stuff here.
There definitely is. And then just very briefly, again, we'd like to plug our social media.
Every episode, right?
Yeah, got it.
Yep.
So, of Of course, we've got GothCastRadio.com, which is our website that hosts all of our content, whether it be video, podcast, or our fashion posts that we do regularly and our news updates. And you can also find us on iTunes.
Yep.
And we also have a YouTube channel, GothCast space video.
Yeah, as I'm recording this, I just uploaded a video of a Bauhaus review.
Yep, in the Flat Feel review.
Yeah, so I thought it was kind of important to do some video content. The videos, the world's a very visual place right now.
It definitely is.
With YouTube. And while I do enjoy podcasting probably more than most of the other things that we do,
Yeah.
video, it's a very strong medium. And I thought it was kind of important to put that out there.
And we thought people would enjoy it.
Exactly. Just kind of taking some of the segments of the podcast and kind of reinterpreting it in a different way.
Expanding on them. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So if you have the chance, check that out. And again, if you like this podcast and you want to hear more, please subscribe and let us know what you think. You can always contact us, whether it be Facebook, Instagram. I forgot to mention that we have an Instagram.
Yeah, at GothCast.
So yeah, you can hit us up on either of those mediums, or you can just email us at gothcastradio@gmail.com.
Always checking it.
Yep.
So we hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'm Dr. Sanders.
And I'm Robbie Gore.
Stay spooky.